G'day and welcome to the Life Aquatic with Rob.
Hi guys and welcome to the Life Aquatic with Aaliyah
and Rob.
G'day YouTube, Rob here with a special guest presenter this week, my niece Aaliyah. She wanted to be in a YouTube movie and who am I to say no? So today we'll be looking at how I set up a tank so that I can add fish that day, while we take a look at the new aquascape in the 20 gallon that I've just set up. So here we're looking at the early stages of the scape. Unfortunately I'd already added the gravel and much of the decor before I realised that I should be recording it, so we don't quite start from the start. Now there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out here. First being that the rocks are all bedded against the glass, so that if the fish do dig, rocks don't fall and break my aquarium or crush my fish. And the other thing to note is that the water that is in there is all from the tank that I intend to take the established filter media from. And here I am taking the stuff that I wanted out of the shrimp breeding tank. So as you can see here, I've taken some of the filter floss, some lava rock from inside the filter, a big chunk of Java moss, and with the Java moss came a bit of substrate as well that it didn't let go of. And as you can see, I've also taken some shrimp out of that tank. The tank needed a cull, and I decided to see if I could get some shrimp to live in this tank with the fish that I intend to put in there. And I think in total I took about 30 to 40 shrimp. And here we have the stuff that I took out of the shrimp tank acclimatizing in the new tank. And I actually take longer to acclimatize this kind of stuff, so the bacteria and the microorganisms that are living in there, than I do with the fish. So the original plan here was to use the seeded filter that I have in the 4-foot African cichlid tank, as it's been in there cycling for over a month. However, there are an unknown number of fry in that tank, so I'm pretty reluctant to disturb it. Now, quite often when I suggest this method, in places like Facebook, I'm told in no uncertain terms that it's cruel to the fish. However, I've used this method probably more than 100 times between my own tanks and friends' tanks that I've helped to set up, and I've never once had a fish die in the first month after setting one of these up. And I'm currently watching the fish that I've put into this tank, and they could not appear any less stressed. And here I'm showing you a close-up of the bag. Now the reason that I'm doing that is so that you can see the microorganisms swimming around in there. I would assume those are Daphnia, and you can also see on the bottom some tiny little white things, and those are the shrimp eggs that have been discarded by the stressed out shrimp. Now I don't know how many of these microorganisms will survive, but it certainly does seed the tank with them. And one of my upcoming videos will be on the importance of ecosystems in the aquarium, so keep an eye out for that one. Once it's done, I'll throw a link in the description. And here I'm showing you exactly how much water I put in as I'm acclimatizing the bacteria. Now I'll put in about that much every 15 minutes or so until the bag is full. Then I'll empty half the bag of water out without releasing all the stuff. And then I'll repeat the process until I've refilled the bag, and then I'll release the stuff into the aquarium. And here's all the stuff in the tank floating freely and the shrimp running around. So while the water would definitely be different for the shrimp, it should be familiar enough that they don't stress out at all, or at least not stress them out any more than the process of catching them already has. And theoretically the same should apply to the microorganisms. And here you can see me placing the established filter media where I want it, and you'll notice that I'm stuffing it in underneath the sponge filter there, and in between the rock and the sponge filter. And I'm doing that mainly to just keep it in place so that the fish don't pull it out and so forth, and so that the bacteria can easily transfer to the sponge filter itself. Another concern that I hear about this method is people saying, well Rob, that's all well and good if you have an established aquarium to steal the filter media from, but what about people who are setting up their first tank? And to that I generally say, well, those fish don't come from nowhere. They're in an established aquarium in the fish store, and in my experience most fish stores will quite happily give you a little bit of filter media, maybe some substrate, to get your tank kick-started. Now it's not something that they're often asked, so they'll probably look surprised, but if your fish store don't have the time or the inclination to do you that small favour, I would be questioning whether I would want to buy fish from there anyway, personally. And I've neglected the scape side of things while I've been discussing the transfer method, or the kickstarting method, and what you're seeing here is the scape starting to take its final form. You'll notice that there's some fake plants in there, and I generally do throw some in when I first start off an aquarium, and they very rarely get taken out. As long as they look reasonably natural, they will definitely blend in once the Java moss starts to climb all over them. You'll also notice that I don't tie down or glue down the Java moss. I tend to just use a stone and wait for it to cling on, which it will do. Now the other thing I tend to do is to use some fake rocks, and in this case a fake log cave. Now I do that for a couple of reasons. One is to cut down on the weight, and the other is that they're fairly symmetrical and flat on the bottom, so they sit well and provide good supports for things like the caves that I've set up here. So obviously the arched log thing you can see is fake, and the big square grey and white rock in the back right hand corner is also fake in this tank. And here's how the tank ended up looking. As you can see, I've added a fake cave on top of the flat rock over there, which kind of gives it a Lion King appearance, I think. And I've also added some more Java moss and shrimp from another tank that needed some culling done in it, and it was also overgrown with Java moss. You guys will probably also notice that I've used the Star Wars background again here. It's just because I had it left over. And with the Java moss, I'm trying to get it to drape down over the cave entrances like curtains, and sort of splash across the rocks as well. Personally, I think it'll look good and kind of natural, obviously apart from the Star Wars background. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So thanks for watching guys, and now it's time to throw back to my lovely co-host, Aaliyah.
Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.